This video is going to show shading techniques like this one and this one, but nobody should start shading techniques until they have all of their outlining done on their face. If you're going to do just half of the face, then half of your face should have outlining, including directions of the hair, the facial features, all the little details, as many as you can draw in with a light pencil line. If you're going to do the whole face, you should outline the whole face if you can before you start any shading. So before starting any of the techniques in this video, I'd like you to show your outlines only to your teacher before you get the green light to start making some dark shading areas where it's going to be a lot harder to erase and make changes.
Our first drawing technique is to use this 1-inch viewfinder to help us draw our grid square by square. Thank you, Mr. Schmitz, for making these for all the students. What you're going to do is you're going to go square by square, and you're going to put this viewfinder in your square. So let's say I'm on row C. Here's row C. I'm going to put it there, and for C1 on my drawing, it looks like it's going to be all black. So if I'm just outlining, I don't need to do that right now because there's nothing I need to do, no contour lines. C2 has a few of my hairs in it, so I'm lining up with C2. So then when I go to C2 on my drawing, I'm going to just draw a few of those hairs. I look at where they intersect with the lines on all the sides of the squares and try to draw them about the same size. Now I'm going to go to C3. C3 is mostly just my hair, so I could draw some of those outlines here. The direction of my hair is kind of a diagonal, and then I do have a few lines of hair that are a little more snarly. Add those in, and then I'm going to move now to C4. C4 is more interesting. I see my glasses here. So my glasses are going to come up on the left side, go about 3/4 of the way up, and then come across the top here. Okay, and then down here they intersect from underneath the corner. They move up, and then the lens shoots about straight down halfway. Straight down halfway right there. And then there's that extra line here for the lens. Okay, so this square can help you a lot. If you want to just see only one square at a time, it'll be a little bit easier and less confusing.
When you're still in your outlining phase, you may want to look at the shapes that the shadows make. Under my glasses right here, it's like an upside down U. So when I go to put that in here, I could actually draw in like this, a real light area where my shading will be, and then later on I'll fill that in with a nice dark value. Another example would be like this area right here coming off my nose. I may want to actually draw that, okay, coming down like this, just real lightly so I kind of can tell which areas are going to be shaded the most.
Another thing to do before you start shading is to erase the really light areas of your drawing so that you don't have the grid in those areas. So right here on my forehead, it's a really light gray, so I don't really want these lines there when I go to shade. I'll probably still see them a little bit to help guide me, but then my shading will be more even because I won't have the lines running through the middle of my forehead. You always want to get rid of your shavings from your eraser too, because they can create bumps in your drawing. One way to get a nice gray area, instead of using a pencil and just going in like this, that'll create lines that then you have to smooth out. You can do a trick where you make like almost an inkwell. Get a 6B or a 4B pencil, and then get a piece of scratch paper and draw a nice dark area. You can see that some of the pencils are already breaking off. This is going to be your inkwell. So then you can take a Q-tip and dip into it lightly, and you can see the Q-tips picking up some of that carbon there. And then you can bring that over to your face and do some smoother gray areas without creating pencil lines that you'll have to smooth out later. You can do this, and then if you go into a space where you don't want the shading, for example, my earring here has white on it. So if I accidentally went into that area of my earring with my Q-tip, I can more easily erase this gray area with my eraser than I could if I had done the shading with a pencil. Now I can go back in and more easily erase that area that went into my earring
without having any pencil lines there.
Another thing to note is that if a Q-tip starts falling apart, you can actually just kind of wrap it up again and use it a little more before you throw it away. If you really like using your fingers for shading, sometimes students like to do that instead of using the Q-tips. You want to make sure that your fingers are clean before you go in and do the shading with your fingers. Dirty fingers have oil on them, and then it'll be harder to erase the shading if it has oil in it.
Now some of you are going to want to go really dark value right away so that you can start to see where it is most shaded in your drawing and then the most highlighted in your drawing. The places that are the most white, you're not going to shade at all, but these places that are really, really black, you can do with a 6B or 4B pencil. What you want to do first is just make sure that they are placed correctly before you go making those dark lines. For example, my nostrils here are in 6D, and this one's almost right smack dab in the middle. So before I go to color this, I'm just going to double check that it's positioned correctly, and then that's when I can go in and do the really dark value for the inside of my nostril. Now the cool thing about doing that is now I can take a Q-tip and I can use this almost like an inkwell, and I can use it to shade other parts of my nose by just pulling some of that carbon out of the dark nostril coloring.